All right, I think it's time to get started. Welcome everybody for joining us. It's Thursday, June 11th, 2020. We are live streaming from Silicon Valley in the East Bay. I'm Louis Lowe, the founder of L2 Council, and I'm joined by my colleague and friend, Natasha Allen and Nicole Hatcher. I think Nicole's running a few minutes late. Natasha, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Natasha Allen. Nicole and I have started our own firm called Allen and Hatcher, LLP. We work mainly with startups, do transactional work such as M&A transactions and corporate financing. We started off with a law firm that was heavily inundated with technology, having previously worked at Atrium. So we've seen both sides. So the side of the user and also the side of the engineers putting these tools together. So I'm very excited to be here today, and let's talk through some of these tools that are out there.
Thanks so much for joining, Natasha. And really the background of this call is that through the last 3 to 6 months, we've all had to figure out new tools to collaborate and get work done remotely, as well as more efficiently as there have been less of us around to get things done. And so what we wanted to do was share with you an agenda of the various tools that we have found are useful, some of which are really client-facing tools and others that are tools for managing lawyers. And so that's how we've kind of divided it up. I hope that it's a useful program. I want everyone to know that in addition to a comment button on the side or a chat button, there is a Q&A function that should be at the top of your screen. And Natasha is going to be watching those questions, and to the extent that they're directly relevant to what we're talking about, we will interrupt the flow, and that'll make this more fun. Otherwise, if they are not necessarily germane to the slide we're on, we'll hit them all together at the end, if that works. So without further ado, I think I wanted to dive in, Natasha. And the first and most obvious item that I thought would be worthwhile for us to talk about are the various communication and collaboration tools that are out there to help us stay connected and work together. And I would love to hear from you, Natasha, about which of the various video collaboration tools that you find that work for you in your practice and that are really useful for collaborating with your clients.
Yeah, so I think it's very interesting. Skype has been around for so long. I think it's one of the older collaboration tools. Actually, RingCentral came in before Skype. But Skype is similar to Zoom and Zoom's functionality. But Zoom ate its breakfast. When all of COVID happened and everyone had to, be shelter in place, it seemed like Zoom came up front and was very quick in terms of just acquiring clients and customers. It's mainly probably because Zoom, well, both of them are free. But the functionality on Zoom, I think, is super easy in terms of the interface. We use Zoom for our meetings as well, especially external facing for clients. And again, it's just the ease of using the system. It's a web-based system. You don't have to download anything. Super collaborative. You can share your documents. You can share screens. And also the feature of recording is also very handy. We did use RingCentral at some point when we were at Atrium. And RingCentral, I think, it's good in that it's a phone app that can be used internationally. And it has texting features, which for me and for most attorneys is a great thing to have. Because a lot of our clients, especially working with startups, do enjoy using that texting feature. Internally, what we do use for our team and at our law firm, we do use Microsoft Teams. And that is just a real easy, seamless system that collaborates or integrates with the fact that we use Microsoft 365. So you can chat, you can do meetings, you can have videos, you can share documents. So part of that Microsoft suite, so if that's part of what you're using, it's just an easy flow of a way to communicate internally and externally, because Teams does allow for external collaboration with clients.
I'm seeing that Skype is heavily integrated in a bunch of firms, and I know that that's owned by Microsoft. Is there any difference that you can see between using Skype versus Microsoft Teams? Is there a principal difference between those two?
I would say that having had to download the Skype interface, it took a little longer to get it worked into your workflow. So you have to download the operating systems and make sure that it's on your computer. Whereas with Teams, because we have 365, you simply press a button and you're already on Teams. So in terms of just getting the services and the ability to use it quite easily, I would say Teams was very seamless. It was, again, just pressing a button and you were ready to roll.
Cisco and WebEx was something I think I was using in 2004 or 5.
Yeah.
And I think it's still out there. And I'm wondering if you're still seeing it in your practice, Natasha, and with your corporate clients.
Some of the larger clients still use Cisco WebEx, but I'd say in terms of communications, especially with a lot of the startups that we work with, it's either Zoom, Skype, or even Google Hangouts seems to be the go-to for most of the startups we work with. But Cisco, I am seeing it with some of the larger clients. Again, because if they're established, they would have started off with Cisco WebEx, so you wouldn't necessarily take that out of operation.
Yeah. So, another communication tool that I use a lot with my international clients is WhatsApp. Just because it's free, it's encrypted, you can delete a message. Some people are using Signal because of the automatic message deletion features. Any thoughts on those kinds of tools? I mean, and what else is really great about WhatsApp is that you can put it on your desktop so that while you're working, you can get your text messages on your screen, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I haven't figured out yet how to do group calls in WhatsApp. What do you think the differences are of WhatsApp?
So I have not used WhatsApp, pretty frequently. What I use is Signal. And I've been conversing with friends and family over Signal, again, because like you said, it's a capability that it's more secure and you can delete messages. I was a late adopter to WhatsApp, let's say that, and then got quickly converted by my friends over to Signal, just because they did say it was more secure and just an easier way to collaborate with them directly.
Yeah, I think the call quality on WhatsApp is pretty awesome. But let's face it, the reality is that the word Zoom has become the verb for a conference call, and I think they are really dominating the space. Their IPO last year was super successful, and despite all prognostications that it was overpriced, it's just gone through the roof. And so I predict that Zoom is with us to stay. I'm going to put in a small plug for another remote collaboration tool that I'm using with one of my clients called Flow Immersive, which is an augmented analytics and augmented reality platform where if you've got the AR, VR glasses from either Samsung VR or the company in Florida whose name is escaping me right now, with the glasses, you can really actually be in a room and physically interact with the data that you're sharing, which is, I think, the next wave of where remote collaboration is going. I guess before we move off, my last question is, as we all communicate remotely, we all have cell phones, and some of us have a work cell phone and a personal cell phone, and maybe we don't want to be giving that number out, and maybe we don't want to have a landline. Are you using, Natasha, are you finding that companies are using some sort of voice over IP platform to do phone calls as well as remote communication collaboration like Zoom?
Definitely. I think the majority of firms that I've spoken to do use some type of voice. It's just an easier way to be anywhere and still be in contact with your clients, because obviously your phone is always with you and that phone number will be with you wherever you are. So it's just an easier way to collaborate with clients and make sure that you're available for them when they do need the help. Like I was saying previously, the benefit of some of these systems or communication and collaboration tools are that some of them do allow for texting, which is sometimes preferable to sending a call or sending an email, just to send a quick text. So that's definitely a feature I think that a lot of firms are using. And voice is just, I think that has kind of taken over from the landline altogether. I don't know if there are a lot of smaller firms, maybe larger firms probably still have landlines, but I think a lot of the smaller mid-sized firms are going with voice.
Yeah, I've always found that, you know, as a outside counsel serving clients, that if my phone wasn't answered when somebody picked up the phone to call, that they would quickly go to the next lawyer. So I'm very conscious of making sure that we answer the phone, and I think that's you know, one of the most important things that as a lawyer you can do to help your clients is to answer the phone. And so I think Google's got a pretty good phone product, and as I think Zoom even has a phone product. So that will kind of manage your voice operations wherever you are. I guess we should move on to the next topic, because we could talk forever about collaboration. But you know, as we're all working remotely and we're not next to each other, you know, not only do we need to figure out how to store documents in a place that everyone that on our team can access, but we've got to find a way that we can edit them together. And you know, I'd love to get your thoughts on, Natasha, on which of the very many storage products and collaboration products really that you think are going to be important for our entrepreneurs and startups to integrate into their legal operations.
So moving on to the collaboration you said?
Yeah, I'm talking about, you know, do we go with Google Drive or OneDrive or Dropbox or Box, and what do you see as best in class?
Yeah, so I think there are so many out there, and it really just depends on what you're trying to achieve. So obviously, Box, Dropbox, those are all very good if you want to have storage of documents and just a place to have, and even like a high volume storage of documents. Sometimes, you know, trying to send closing volume to clients over email just won't work due to the capacity or the size of the, you know, emails that you're trying to send. So an alternative is sometimes the best alternative is just to put it in a Dropbox folder or a Box folder. Box, I think, allows for a little more collaboration than Dropbox, but still they both have the same type of benefit of being able to have larger repositories of, you know, documents. OneDrive, again, if you're on the Microsoft 365 suite, it's just a very easy way to always have access to your files. You log into Microsoft anywhere. You don't necessarily have to be sitting at your desk or even, you know, in your office, and you can access any of the documents that you would have put or saved on OneDrive. OneDrive is also great in that it allows for collaboration. So that's another thing that documents that you have in OneDrive would allow you to do, is to have multiple people working on the same document, kind of similar to what Google Docs allows for, but in the Microsoft suite. NetDocs is probably one of the old school, maybe not the oldest school, but old school document management system for law firms. The reason why I like NetDocs is just the way that you can search different files and the way that you can organize. So obviously, if you are running a law firm and you have high volume documents, you have a lot of documents, you want to make sure they're easy to search and also put in folders and organized in a manner that you can easily access documents for your clients. I'd say that with Dropbox and with Box, Google Drive, and even to some extent OneDrive, you don't have that ability to search easily, to just pick out one document and make sure that you can organize it based on files, subfiles, or subfolders, I mean, folders and subfolders, to just make sure you're organized and can be very efficient. But all of them are actually great systems to use. It really just depends on what's your main operating system, because that's usually the easier one to use as it integrates into everything.
Yeah, and I guess I'll share my own thoughts, or that I think companies I'm seeing adopt the Google suite of collaboration tools, so Google Docs essentially, and they therefore then collaborate together on documents using Google Drive. And I think that that's a really useful tool. And my own concern with using it is just version control. And you can see what documents and documents I create suddenly getting changed and moved around, and me not being able to know who did them or how. And I'm sure there are ways of restricting that, but that's my great fear with using Google Drive. So I think it's great for collaboration in a 2 or 3 person scenario, but when you get beyond that, I find it really hard to control. Um,
Yeah.
HiQ is a product that I think a lot of law firms have adopted for data rooms for their startup clients, and just as a place where they can store documents in an encrypted way up on the cloud. Nobody can modify them, and you can control who has looked at what document, who has access to what document, can they download it, print it. And I think that it's become a best-in-class tool for startups to collaborate with their outside counsel. I haven't seen large companies using HiQ to work with their law firms. And I would say that the principal competitor to HiQ is either Dropbox or Box, and I think those are both really great platforms. Both for security and sharing and the way that it can be organized. My big beef with Dropbox is that it's hard to tell what has been changed in a Dropbox folder. So if I'm diligence, or I want to know what's just been added to the Dropbox, it's hard for me to understand what has changed. And so that's one of the reasons I
And
really
that's
like the product.
Yeah, and that's a feature that actually I really enjoy using on Box, is that you can monitor and see who is accessing and doing what to the folders and files. So there is a feature in Box specifically that allows you to kind of have a pulse on what are happening to the documents that are in Dropbox, who is collaborating. It allows you to not have collaborators view or see who else is collaborating in the same folder. So I've used Box a lot, not necessarily Dropbox, but I do know that that's specifically a feature that I really enjoy with Box.
Awesome, awesome. I think we ought to talk about e-signing, and I think 6, 7 years ago, companies paid their outside counsel to chase signature pages on formation documents, on financings, and I think it still happens with mergers and acquisition closings. And
Yeah.
I try and avoid any physical signatures at this point. The Federal e-sign Act makes the electronic signing of documents fully legal and effective. The only place where I still see physical signatures being required are where documents need to be notarized. And so bank mortgages, for example, and there are probably still a couple of other areas that are still on wet paper signatures. But I'm a
In
huge
some states, they're
fan
hiding.
of DocuSign and their corporate product and the file folders, and just the whole functionality of it really, I think, has changed the way I interact with clients. But Natasha, what are you seeing in terms of e-signing products?
Yeah, we have been using e-signing forever. I think that I agree with you. Most people have moved to e-signing. Some government filings, security filings, do still require wet signatures, which I think is very odd, but that's just the way it is. But majority of companies, entities, organizations do allow for some type of e-signing. We've used both. So we used HelloSign in a previous life at Atrium, and then we're currently using DocuSign. Both have similar functionalities. I think DocuSign is a little more robust in terms of its capability, and then also just seeing that DocuSign is expanding into storage as well, so storage documents and things of that nature. So I think, like I said, DocuSign, I think it's just had a little more time to kind of figure out their niche than HelloSign, but both are great systems. Both have very good functionality and make it super easy to get documents executed and get transactions closed quicker than previously, when you have to literally chase down people who are on vacation. All they have to do is, as long as they have a phone and an internet service, you can finish whatever transaction you need to finish. So I think these three, and I'm sure there's more out there, but the e-signing capability has really moved the needle in terms of making legal transactions way more effective and efficient.
So I know HelloSign was acquired by Dropbox in early 2019, and obviously Dropbox being one of the premier document storage and sharing platforms, merging with one of the e-signing platforms. Have you seen the product evolve since the acquisition and get better integrated? I find that DocuSign is just has wonderful APIs with other
Yeah.
platforms that I use, and HelloSign I think has the power to catch up and maybe even launch ahead. But I'm still seeing DocuSign as kind of the premier, more. It's still the verb, right? Like you say, you're going to Uber
Yeah.
somewhere, you're going to
Yeah.
the conference call, you're going to DocuSign is an e-signature. I don't hear people say hello signing.
Yeah. That's true. I have not seen the new iteration since the acquisition. We've been using DocuSign, but have not returned back to HelloSign. But it would be interesting to see what they do, because I agree with you. I don't think that HelloSign is that far behind. They just started later. There was one comment from somebody in the audience that also said that PandaDoc is a great company, electronic signing, signature, and managing document system. I haven't used PandaDoc, but Louis, I don't know if you're familiar with that interface or
Haven't used it. Haven't used it. I do see Adobe Sign quite a bit with really large enterprises, and I'm not really sure why Adobe seems to be more the program of choice for large companies, and I suspect that it might have something to do with pricing, because I think DocuSign can be expensive.
Yeah, yeah. To get all the bells and whistles, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we move on, obviously we're lawyers, and Natasha, and in our audience, I think we have a lot of entrepreneurs, we have a lot of CFOs who are responsible for managing the legal function, and we have a lot of internal counsel. And I think in the early stages of companies, we're seeing these companies here on this slide, Shoebox, Clerky, Carta, LegalZoom, being really, really ubiquitous and helpful in managing the workflow of early stage companies. But tell me, which of these are you using in your practice, Natasha, and which do you think are going to be poised to consolidate the sector?
Yeah, so I think that some of these are interesting, that they do have both client-facing and a lawyer-facing kind of functionality. The one that we use most would be Carta in terms of online corporate cap table management. But Carta is also expanding into trying to do minor board consents and things of that nature. So Carta is trying to expand. But Carta has been around for a long time. And we find that a lot of our clients, especially if you start getting into equity issuances, you have a larger number of common stock preferred stockholders, it's just an easier way for startups to save their time, so they don't have to constantly be answering questions from their investors or employees in terms of what's the status of my vesting schedule, or how many shares do I own, or what's my percentage ownership. It's kind of a one-stop shop. Everyone can self-serve themselves, which I think saves a lot of time as soon as your cap table starts to get a little more robust. Clerky, I've seen it on the side of clients using Clerky. So Clerky is very common that we are seeing it for formations. We're also seeing people using it for notes or safes, the convertible notes or issuing safes. A lot of people have been using Clerky. I was noticing that Clerky also has a lawyer interface side. So lawyers could also have a Clerky account where you can keep all of your clients on Clerky and manage the documents on the Clerky system. Shoebox is an interesting platform. So I had not heard about Shoebox before and did a little bit of digging. It's kind of a one-stop shop. So it's a platform where startups can collaborate on HR, legal services, incorporation, hiring, have your board and stockholders all collaborate on one platform. So in terms of what I see the future being, I think the idea of having a hub and startups having a hub where they can keep all of their important legal matters, right? Whether they be legal documents or just HR matters, or I need to collaborate or integrate or discuss things with my board members or stockholders. I think the hub model is actually the model that most startups, especially as they start to scale, would probably resonate more with them. The interesting thing about Shoebox is that it seems like it's for a startup-oriented type company, but it does allow for attorneys to collaborate with their clients on Shoebox. So
Yes.
it's a very interesting platform.
Yes, Shoebox. And when I was at DLA Piper, we integrated Shoebox into our service offering for startups. The thought being that, it could be a freemium service that would allow them to not only store their documents and create their documents, but to kind of manage the workflow so that once this document got signed, then you go to sign the next one and so forth, and that it was kind of a walled garden. And I found that if you started a company inside Shoebox and you really knew how to use it, it was a fabulous, fabulous tool. But when I found that when I was trying to import startups into Shoebox that hadn't been formed into Shoebox, that it was difficult. And I think that's one of the reasons that it has not perhaps become as ubiquitous as some of the other platforms. But really, I think the future here of these tools is how they can really use artificial intelligence and other tools to manage the workflow and the workflow automation so that you don't have to be using law firms and lawyers and paralegals to do what I'll call commoditized tasks for them to have proper legal effect. And so I think Clerky has done a better job of that part. One other thing I wanted to mention about Carta that we didn't touch on is that's really an amazing tool. Is they have really consolidated the market for providing third-party valuations to startups so that they can have an exemption and a safe harbor under the Section 409A of the tax code upon the granting of stock options, that there won't be a cheap stock issue or a grant below fair market value. And so at the early stages of a company, I had been seeing companies moving away from getting 409As at all until Carta came around with a really value-priced model that scales with your growth. So it's very inexpensive at the early stages and can be more sophisticated and targeted at the later stage. So I think it's just an amazing tool, and I could see Carta consolidating the space by acquiring some of the other functionalities of the other platforms or the other platforms themselves. Finally, I want to note for LegalZoom. I worked on for LegalZoom for many years, and I think it's just a fabulous, fabulous platform for companies that won't necessarily raise venture capital, but that need to help their entrepreneurs protect themselves from personal liability. So if you're going to open up a flower shop or a dry cleaner or a consulting business, LegalZoom just is a wonderful tool. It's really intuitive. They provide not only all of the legal documents to a formation or trademark your business name, but they also have legal insurance so that you can get connected to a lawyer in all 50 states to at least have a free consultation in the first hour of service to knock out your problem. They can provide for an additional fee. So I just think that's a phenomenally great platform. I don't run across it in my practice, and I don't see corporate clients using it. It's really for very small business, but I think it's a tool that will be around to stay, and really just a wealth of fantastic documents for small business and even for individuals. You can get an estate plan or trust document. They're really forward-thinking, well-thought-out documents. For example, they think about your digital assets. Who's going to inherit your Facebook account if you were to pass? And so, it's just one of the many really awesome features of LegalZoom. I know we're getting shorter on time, so I want to keep going. Um,
Yeah.
Obviously, Natasha, there's just a lot of tools out there that are helpful to, store legal documents. I'm thinking of your like legal safe
Yeah.
and manage, the interaction on billing between clients and lawyers. And I'd love to hear from you. I know you just set up your own firm and you did a deep dive into the market, and would love to hear from you as to what you selected and why.
Yeah, so we selected Clio, and really it was based on the ease of using Clio. It's a pretty much one-stop shop. You can run reports in terms of, client acquisitions. How are you doing in terms of your billable hours and setting targets? The other thing is that it's seamless in terms of just sending bills. So for anyone who starts out a law firm, that is something you're going to have to figure out, and you're going to have to figure it out quickly. But it is very seamless. It has an interface with the client so that they can go onto their own dashboard. The dashboard allows for the clients not only to see their invoices, but to have access to their own legal records, which is something I think is very important, right? They belong to the client, and they should be able to say, I need to see what my certificate of incorporation is. Well, you should have the ability to do that without having to wait for your attorney. It also has a collaboration tool. You can collaborate with your internal team as well as external. And it has, similar features to Asana, where it has a task board, it has a calendar feature. And the really interesting thing with Clio is that it integrates into a lot of different systems. So if you're on QuickBooks, if you are on DocuSign, NetDocs, all of that integrates into Clio. So for us, we thought it was just a one-stop shop. I'm sure it's way more powerful than we're using it at this point, but we've only been around for a little while, but I'm sure there's more functionalities that we could tap into for Clio.
Did you look
but
at
Louis, I know that you decided on Practice Panther, so what was your thought process behind Practice Panther?
Yeah, so when I formed my own firm last October, I really was looking quickly for just the ability to send bills in a streamlined fashion, and I found that just for the billing interface, that Practice Panther was the most intuitive, and had the nicest, cleanest dashboard, and it allowed me to manage just the very few clients that I had, and the various matters and how they wanted to be billed. And it helped me see, when a client had opened an invoice, had they received it. It also allowed me to create a PDF of it. It integrates with QuickBooks, which the extent that you've got to do that is very important. I wasn't yet thinking, Natasha, at the time that I was making the selection of a matter management system, about sharing documents and the non-billing features. And I think that the ability to share files and store what I'll call official final signed documents, I didn't really consider that. And I think Clio's got a pretty robust system there that I haven't figured out how to do in Practice Panther. I would say the other piece of Clio that I didn't consider at the time was the ability to integrate your customer relations management system into your system. And I think Clio's got an extension for that, that Practice Panther may not. And to the extent that I'm wrong, to my friends at Practice Panther, I promise to learn more about it. I would say that I'm seeing small law firms using Clio and Practice Panther to interface with their startup clients, but I'm not seeing large companies using these platforms to manage their outside counsel spend. And I still see them using Serengeti, which is been acquired by Thomson Reuters. And I see that enterprises are really trying to derive as much data as possible from their bills, and that they use Serengeti to do that. I've seen large companies use Simple Legal as well, and I think that's just a more advanced, easier to interface product that I'm seeing a lot of companies migrate to. Serengeti has a lot of functionality, but I think it's maybe for some people overly complex, and the
Yeah.
data perhaps not necessarily relevant to all consumers. Um, and how about Acuity? Is that one you've seen before, Natasha?
I have not seen acuity in my day-to-day, or even when we were doing our whole huge analysis. Whenever you start a firm, you try to look at all options that are out there, and we kind of found Clio and said this is exactly what we're looking for. I think one of the benefits are that it's a communication hub for the client, so you can organize documents and track cases. So I don't know if it's mainly for a litigation practice, or if it is just for an ability to track client matters. But yeah, it is one of the ones that are out there that people are using quite readily.
Yeah, and I guess I would say that I'm also seeing a lot of larger corporations put another overlay on top of the software platform, and they're contracting with a company called Elevate to further analyze their spend and enforce the application of outside counsel billing guidelines, so that those can be automatically, each time entry can be rejected or accepted or edited. And I'm also finding that Serengeti combined with Elevate seems to be how a lot of large corporations are trying to manage, lots of outside counsel spend in an automated way. And I think those tools can be effective, but I'm guessing that the cost of Elevate is probably as much as you're saving on your outside counsel, and you're probably creating a lot of friction as you do that. So I'm not a huge fan of Elevate, but I do understand that large companies who have 200 to 300 outside counsel vendors need a solution to manage the spend, and certainly I wanted to call that out. Moving on, I am often asked by companies, Natasha, what they should do to manage their many contracts. When companies get to scale phase, hopefully they're onboarding tons and tons of customers every month, and obviously each of those contracts has a termination date, or it can be terminated for convenience or upon certain events, and there's compliance with those contracts, and I'm finding that at the early stage, obviously it's just sign the contract, but at some point you get to a stage of growth where you not only need to sign the contract, but you need to manage the lifetime value of the customer. And so we've listed on the screen a number of different platforms that we have seen or heard about. And I would love to hear from you, Natasha, what you're seeing in the startup world.
Yeah, so for what we've been seeing and what we've used would be more of the technology that deals with document generation. So that would be the Contract Companion and Contract Express. So those are the systems where you have clients, customers fill out a questionnaire, and then your contract is generated. So it lessens the time of the back and forth with clients and customers, and allows for you to have a fully integrated, ready to go contract after clients or customers input the relevant data. Cura is interesting, where it uses AI to actually review your agreement and pull out clauses or discrepancies that may be happening in the actual agreement. So that's a good way just for you to be able to pull out any type of errors that may be happening or inconsistencies. The interesting thing, I think, with all of those three are that AI is constantly learning. So the more you feed it, the better it gets in terms of information. So, these platforms, or the three platforms that I spoke about, I think that they will just grow and get better over time as they see different use cases and more use cases. And it's very interesting to see how how AI could just take out different clauses and identify them, or know when there's an error in a particular agreement. And I do think that that is pretty much the way that you can make attorneys more efficient and your legal services more efficient, is by having those capabilities of, limiting the back and forth with clients and customers, and just making sure that whatever the attorneys are reviewing, they're using their best abilities, which is reviewing the terms of the agreements, right? Not filling in the name of the buyer, but figuring out, does this buyer have something wrong with whatever they're trying to sell? So it just frees up the time for attorneys to focus on the legal work. So I found that those have been pretty interesting platforms, and specifically we worked directly with Contract Express. Contract Express is interesting because in terms of developing new templates for Contract Express, you have to be trained. It's not very intuitive. So that's the only thing that I think is one of the downsides. But once it's up and running, it's a very powerful tool.
Yeah, I'll share with you that I'm seeing very large law firms and large corporations use Kira just to come in and analyze their library of contracts looking for a specific issue. And law firms are using it to streamline the due diligence process and analyze large bodies of contracts, very quickly. But the danger of any AI platform is garbage in, garbage out. It's only as good as you programmed it, and so you really you need to get your lawyers up to speed on how it works, and they need to use it regularly to really derive the benefit. My good friend Olga Mack has formed a company called Parlay Pro, which is really getting a lot of traction in helping companies quickly execute contracts and collaborate together with counterparties on the platform in one place. And so I think that one is definitely up and coming and really is one to watch. Concord is another platform that I have seen and used, and it allows two parties to negotiate the contract. And what I think is really neat about that is, instead of exchanging markups over email with red lines and track changes, Concord really has an audit trail of who suggested and accepted what change to the document, and then allows it to be signed and stored in one place. So I think that's really great. I think Coupa it is also something that is really helpful in running your enterprise and giving you that information that your contract is up for renewal, time to reach out to the customer, and obviously that's just a critical item. And I see startups failing is not renewing contracts and not engaging in customer satisfaction on an ongoing basis in relation to the life of the contract. And so that's something that's really important. I believe that other programs that do that are called Cobblestone. I think Salesforce also has some capabilities here and features for large enterprises that are pretty amazing. But I think that's a very expensive tool, and you've got to have everyone in your enterprise using it for it to be effective. So some companies are Salesforce, some companies aren't. And so if you're not, you're probably not going to use it for contract review and management. But these are some great tools that folks I'm seeing are using, both big companies and small. And obviously, to the extent folks have questions, feel free to reach out to Natasha or me after the call. Natasha, I want to go to one of my favorite topics, which is how to manage the millions of tasks and the work.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, as I see a lot of solutions out there, and sometimes I feel like the solution is more busy work than the task itself. So which ones do you find are actually effective that you actually use?
So I would say that I was not an Asana convert until I went to Atrium and started using Asana. And Asana, I think, is a great tool, especially if you're someone who likes lists, but active lists. So you can list out all the tasks that you have. You can put specific templates in terms of how to address specific issues. So if you as an attorney, or even you as a client, have addressed a certain matter in a way, maybe a negotiation with a particular customer that may always come up, you can put templates on Asana so that everybody on your team can follow the same steps that brought you to the success or helped you to resolve that issue. Asana also has a email system that says, you know, if you have tasks, it'll send you an email. You can view on your team what tasks people have, so you can help prioritize or reallocate certain tasks to different people. So it's a good way to kind of keep your team, you know, sane. When one is over inundated, you could, you know, move work to somebody else. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. The other tool that I do use is OneNote, but for me, I use OneNote as if I'm meeting with a client and I need to take notes somewhere, and rather than putting it on a random piece of paper, I use OneNote. I always have it there. I can always access OneNote. And for me, it's just an easy way to be organized in terms of just notes I take if I'm on a call or have to remember something specific that doesn't really necessarily have a task or a time date associated with it. It's just something I have to remember. The Trello, I was introduced to Trello when we were at Atrium, and it seemed to be something that the engineers enjoyed a lot. So that's where you have the different tablets that you can move as tasks get completed. For the purposes of what we were trying to do and the tasks that we had, I found that Asana was better in terms of like collaborating. But I think it just depends again on what your objective is, what type of task you have, and how many people have to actually collaborate on that task. Outlook has a whole suite of task management, calendar integration that you could use. I have not used the full suite of Outlook yet in terms of adding tasks and, you know, setting dates because, like I said, we have a lot of our templates, a lot of our clients and matters and things on Asana. So that's pretty much been our go-to. And then Evernote. I've had people who say that they love Evernote, but I don't know, Louis, have you used Evernote pretty frequently?
I am a huge fan of Evernote, and I think it's
Okay.
and I would say that Evernote's principal competitor on this list would be Microsoft OneNote. And I
Yeah.
think if you're a Google Docs person or your software is integrated with Google, Evernote is just awesome. You can create, you know, folders for each client. You can have notes for each client. You can store documents, and it can compete with Dropbox for that. You can have Slack type communications that are either open or closed. It's just an amazing platform. I would say that for most lawyers, however, that I know, they tend to work with Outlook, and
Yeah.
the integration of Evernote into Outlook is not by the fault of Evernote, but I would say that OneNote is really just built for Outlook. And so if you're an Outlook person, OneNote might be easier for you to integrate into your life. Whereas if you're a Google person, I think Evernote is just the best. And you know, one of the other things that I really like about Evernote is the way that it syncs across devices. You can really collaborate with other people as well when you share folders. Lastly, on Evernote, I'd say that they've redesigned their technology stack in the last year and a half, and the user interface is just vastly improved. And I just think it's one of the most amazing products ever built, and I'm a huge fan. But you know, with all of these things, you know, these tools are only as good as you integrate them into your life. And so if you just sort of dabble in it, it's hard to really derive the value. But you know, I use Evernote, for example, to track my favorite restaurants in a city, or where my frequent flyer numbers are, or things like that. So it's got, you know, what I will say, consumer. It's historically been a consumer enterprise. Pardon me, a B2C business, but I think the B2B applications are even more amazing. How about Zoho projects? Is that something that you see a lot in your practice, or have you seen clients using?
I have not seen Zoho in my practice, and I haven't come across clients that use it either. I don't know if you're familiar with Zoho.
Yeah, I had a venture firm that I was a partner of for a few years, and we would use Zoho to track the our due diligence and where we were in the funnel with each potential investment, and so Zoho I thought was a really awesome product to just organize things and create tasks and so forth. But I haven't used it since, and I think if I were to start over again. Uh, I think I would use Evernote or OneNote or frankly Asana. Working with
Yeah.
you, Nicole, Natasha, I have really become a fan of Asana. I think it just the user interface, even though everything that Asana does, you probably could do in Outlook. I just find that the interface and the ability to set up lists and tasks and see, what's been done is just in a separate walled off garden is really nice.
Yeah, it is very nice. We have a couple of questions. Do you want to wait till the end or?
If to the extent that they're relevant to task management, yeah, let's take them.
Let's put them at the end. They were from earlier. I think one's dealing with clerking and then another's dealing with online tools. So we can leave them for the end.
I think we've got 6 minutes left, so we should jam through the remaining slides. Um, to do know-how and research, there is a program called Practical Law, which was acquired by Thomson Reuters, which has standard documents, which has explanations, and which is just a fabulous, fabulous library of legal documents. I subscribe to it. I swear by it. The documents are maintained by really high quality lawyers that were trained at big law firms, and I think they're really, really great. I'm not sure how business friendly they are insofar as I find that a lot of clients want something short that a client or that their business client can sign without a lot of negotiation. And I think that clients might think that the practical law documents are over lawyered insofar as they are written by lawyers for lawyers, designed to really be best in class in terms of the latest case law or whatever. And there's just a lot of points that will get negotiated in there. And so that's why I think that's what I would say the downside is of practical law. I don't know, Natasha, are you finding it ubiquitous in your practice or with clients?
I, similar to you, enjoy practical law, but I do think it is for lawyers, especially given that a lot of the know-how that's included in all of the contracts. So even though there's form contracts that explains what each section does and why the section does that, which a lawyer can geek out on, maybe not necessarily what every startup wants to know about. But practical law, I think, is a great tool for lawyers. The other tool that we have just kind of stumbled on but have been using is Law Insider, which is it's quite an interesting platform. I stumbled on Law Insider a long time ago, but their interface has changed, their search functions have changed to make it a lot user-friendly. But essentially, it's public documents all pulled into one place. So you can search for key terms or market terms, specific contracts that maybe you just want to see what people have done in the past. You can search by clauses, you can search by agreements, you can set the year functionality. So Legal Insider might be, or Law Insider might even be a good way for, if you are a startup company and you're trying to see, well, what should my MSA look like? Maybe go on to Law Insider and see what some other people have done. I'm trying to do a particular niche contract. I found that Law Insider was an interesting place to find sample documents.
How about LexisNexis? When we were in law school, Natasha, we all had free subscriptions so that they could get us addicted before we went out into the world of law. I obviously, for those that it isn't this patently obvious, I'm a corporate lawyer. I do not litigate, and so I'm not often looking for case law. But I think LexisNexis was maybe the place to go if you're a litigator. Or if you're an internal counsel looking for cases. But do you find that it's useful for running legal departments and interacting with startups?
I would say that I have always thought of LexisNexis as a litigation tool, so specifically to look up case law. And we were given a free subscription in law school to make sure that we would love it. But in law school, I used it for legal case research. So similar to you, I am a corporate M&A attorney, so I do have to look up some cases, and I just think that I'm able to do that on practical law to the extent I do need to see cases, but I don't need a system that's strictly or mainly robust with case law. I have not seen a lot of clients using this, which doesn't surprise me. I think that LexisNexis is, or the interface that I'm used to, is mainly for attorneys to help them with their practice, as opposed to a client-facing type tool or platform.
Thanks for that. I think we should hit the Q&A, and I'm sorry our friend Nicole was unable to join us and probably had a client matter pop up. But tell me, Natasha, are you seeing some questions that we should hit on the Q&A?
Yeah, I have two questions. One of them is, have you seen any good online notary services?
I'm not sure if you have, Natasha, but I have not seen an online notary service, but what I have seen is a mobile notary service. And so a few months ago, I was up in San Francisco at a client meeting, and all of a sudden we needed to sign a settlement agreement and have it notarized. And I went online and searched for mobile notary, and boom, somebody popped up, and I phoned them, and 20 minutes later they showed up in the office and they sent the document, and it wasn't the cheapest, but it was pretty amazing that I was able to get a notary that quickly just from, it felt like Uber for notaries.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it goes back to what you were saying, is that most notarizations have to be wet signed, so that's why it would be hard to find an online service for notary. But I also have used the mobile notary, and I think it's brilliant. It's a very easy way to get things notarized.
Yeah. Other questions or other folks in the chat room?
Yeah, so there was one question about the use of Clerky for foreign companies. So should a foreign company incorporate in the U.S. using Clerky? I don't know if that is more of a question that should be discussed offline, because it really just depends on what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to do. So I don't know if you have any comments to that, but I would say maybe that's something that's just best addressed offline.
Yeah, I mean, I think that folks coming to the U.S. that are outside the U.S. need to think about what is the best way to access the U.S. market. And sometimes it's by going direct if you're going to just make one or two one-off sales. If you're looking to raise money here, certainly I think in the vast majority of cases, forming a Delaware corporation is going to be your best bet. And then how you make sure that Delaware corporation has all of the intellectual property and the talent and the assets that an investor is going to want in order to make an investment is another matter. And so I find that a flip or a creation of a subsidiary in the U.S. to access the U.S. market really requires legal advice. And so I would not go to one of the online platforms. Now, once you've gotten legal advice, I think you should ask the lawyer that you consult with. Now that I've decided on what my strategy is, what's the cheapest, easiest way of doing that? And I've certainly sent many clients to LegalZoom to do tasks like that, where I know that their need is not going to require my ongoing assistance, and I don't want to be in the position of sending them bills to maintain a company that doesn't have a lot of activity. So I think that LegalZoom, Clerky, and all of those things are great solutions, but you really need to first figure out what it is that you're trying to accomplish. I'm seeing that.
Also, I just want to touch on that, but also in terms of where are they based and what are you trying to achieve? So I think really the reason why you would talk to a lawyer is to come up with a bit better plan than just incorporating in the U.S., but what's your long-term goal, so that you can have some planning behind that and not put yourself in a position where you have to dissolve the U.S. entity because it no longer serves the purpose of your future goals. So I agree with you, Louis, that talking to an attorney, and then for sure going off, and if you can find a better or cheaper way to implement the plan or process that your attorney would have suggested, then for sure most attorneys would say please do so.
My friend Rick Arnold is calling out that PandaDoc is a great e-signature and document management company for sales-oriented companies. Thanks, Rick. I have
Yeah.
seen the docs before, but I didn't know why it was being used instead of DocuSign, and so I will definitely check that out. My friend Brett Waters has called out Ironclap as a good platform that's bringing artificial intelligence to legal contracts. So I'll definitely take a look at that one. Finally,
Yeah.
my friend Kate has noted that for me that she created these awesome slides, and in the first few minutes I had all the notes on. So I guess when we share these slides with folks after the call, we'll share them with the notes, which have a little bit more of a detailed dive into each of the platforms that we talked about. And with that, I think unless there are more questions, Natasha, we should wrap. And I wanted to thank everybody for joining, and you, Natasha, for sharing all of this learning that you did at Atrium and in founding your firm. I've certainly benefited from your advice and Nicole's advice, and really grateful for you participating. We will make these slides available with the notes in a follow-up email today or tomorrow. We will put a full recording of this up on YouTube as well as on Next Juris. And for those lawyers out there, Next Juris is an awesome platform to manage your MCLE ongoing legal education requirements. And so we'll post this as a course, and then you can click through it and get CLE credit. So really awesome platform. Really recommend you take a look at it. And it's got a great library of content, not just from me, but much bigger law firms than L2 Counsel. Natasha, any final words?
No, I just want to thank you for having me here today. It was a wonderful talk. And everyone, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either Louis or I or Nicole.
And Nicole and Natasha's emails are right here, and obviously we'll be following up with those. And they're fantastic lawyers and great people, and I am very lucky to know them. And thanks again for joining, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Great, thank you.
Bye bye.